The retrograde I first covered on February 24th enters its final act today. 15 days in, 8 days remaining. And I want to name the pattern I have been tracking across this entire retrograde, because the pattern has a shape that is only visible now from the vantage point of the final third. The shape is a 3-act structure, not imposed on the retrograde, observed within it. Act 1 was the dismantling, February 25th through approximately March 5th. Mercury moved backward through the communication infrastructure that was in place when the Saturn-Neptune conjunction landed. It took apart the old vocabulary, the familiar phrases that were not precise enough, the approximate language that was close but not right. By the end of Act 1, the old communication tools had been systematically deconstructed. You knew things you could not say. You felt things you could not describe. The gap between knowing and expressing had widened to its maximum. Act 2 was the confirmation, approximately March 5th through March 11th. The cazimi on March 7th provided 24 hours of purified clarity inside the fog. The midpoint check-in on March 5th identified what was being revised. Venus entering Aries on March 6th provided the courage to want clearly. Jupiter stationing direct on March 9th expanded the field. Mars conjunct the North Node on March 10th aligned action with direction. Act 2 was not about dismantling. It was about confirming. Confirming that the revision was productive, that the new understanding forming underneath the dismantled language was real and directionally sound. The cazimi was the stamp of confirmation. Everything that followed was the confirmation being validated by the transit landscape. Act 3 begins now, and Act 3 is about building. The dismantling is complete. The confirmation has been received. What remains is the construction of the new vocabulary, the new communication tools. The language that can actually carry the eclipse material, the conjunction clarity, the retrograde revisions, and the Venus and Aries directness into functional expression. The final 8 days of this retrograde are not more dismantling. They are not more fog. The fog is thinning, the scramble is easing, and in the space where the scramble used to be, new words are appearing, sentences that hold weight, descriptions that match the thing they describe, framings that feel right instead of approximate. The building has begun, and by March 20th, when Mercury stations direct, the new vocabulary will be ready for use. I want to describe what the building process feels like, because it differs from both the dismantling and the confirmation, and if you are in it right now, you will recognize it immediately. The dismantling felt like loss, words failing, communication breaking, sentences that used to work no longer carrying the meaning you intended. The confirmation felt like brief clarity inside ongoing fog, the cazimi window, a flash of functional expression surrounded by continued scramble. The building feels like neither of those. The building feels like slow return, not the sudden clarity of the cazimi, a gradual process of language becoming available again, like a room where the lights are being turned up on a dimmer rather than switched on. The room is the same room. The contents are the same contents, but you can see them more clearly each day. And crucially, you can describe them more accurately each day. I noticed this in my own communication this week. On Monday, I tried to explain to someone what the Mars node conjunction had meant for me, and the explanation came out cleaner than anything I had managed since the retrograde began. Not perfect, not pre-retrograde fluency, but noticeably more precise than last week. The sentence structure held. The metaphors landed closer to where I aimed them. The gap between what I meant and what I said had narrowed measurably. That narrowing is the building process in action. It happens daily during the final third. Like a muscle that atrophied during weeks of disuse, gradually regaining function through incremental exercise. If you have noticed this week that you are able to articulate things that were unspeakable a week ago, that is the building process. The new vocabulary arriving piece by piece, word by word, sentence by sentence. The fog thins, the language returns. But the language that returns is not the same language that was dismantled. It is more precise, more honest, more capable of carrying the weight of what you now know. Before the retrograde, you could describe your feelings with approximate accuracy. After the retrograde, you will be able to describe them with surgical accuracy. The difference is the 3 weeks of revision that rebuilt the tools from the foundation up. Venus is doing something important this week that interacts with the retrograde's building process, and I want to flag it because the timing is not coincidental, and the interaction produces a specific window of opportunity. Venus entered Aries on March 6th and has been moving through the early degrees of Aries since then. This week, Venus crosses the exact degree where Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, 0 to 1 degrees of Aries. The same degree that produced the conjunction clarity on February 20th. When Venus crosses this degree, she triggers the conjunction again, but through the lens of relationship and value. What you want in partnership. What you value in yourself and others. What you find worth investing in. How you express love. What you require from love in return. The conjunction trigger through Venus is likely to produce a moment of startling clarity about a relationship or a value that has been in process since the conjunction landed. Not new information, a crystallization of information that was already present but had not yet consolidated into a clear statement. Several people in the tracking group reported something like this over the past 2 days. One person described suddenly knowing with certainty what they needed from their partner. Not a vague feeling, a sentence. I need this specific thing, and I am no longer willing to pretend otherwise. That sentence arrived with Venus crossing the conjunction degree. Another person reported clarity about a financial decision they had been circling since February. The value suddenly became measurable. They could name the number, name the priority, name the trade-off they were and were not willing to make. That specificity is Venus in Aries crossing Saturn-Neptune. The conjunction provides the structural clarity. Venus translates it into desire language. Aries makes the desire non-negotiable. Here's where this connects to the retrograde's building process, and this connection is what makes this week particularly potent. Venus triggering the conjunction zone provides the content, the relationship clarity, the value insight, the statement about what you want. And the retrograde's building process is providing the language to express that content. The timing means that this week you may experience both the crystallization of what you want to say about a relationship and the first available language precise enough to say it. Not perfect language, available language. Functional enough to carry the message even if it is not yet polished. The combination is powerful. Content arriving simultaneously with the capacity to express it. That has not been the case for the past 2 weeks. During most of this retrograde, you had the content, but lacked the language. This week, you begin to have both. And by March 20th, both will be fully available. What is becoming speakable now that was not speakable a week ago? I want to catalog this because naming the areas of emerging expressiveness helps you focus the building process. First, the eclipse reading is becoming narratable. A week ago, you could feel what the eclipse showed you, but you could not tell someone about it coherently. This week, the narrative is forming. The story of what the eclipse revealed is beginning to have a structure you can share. Not a polished presentation, a coherent account. The difference between, "I feel like something shifted," and "here's what shifted, and here is what it means." Second, the conjunction clarity is becoming shareable. The structural insight that landed on February 20th has been sitting in your awareness for nearly 3 weeks, but the retrograde prevented clean transmission. This week, the transmission is becoming possible. You can begin to express the insight to the people who need to hear it. Third, the Venus in Aries wanting is becoming articulable. What you want in relationships and what you value has been felt since March 6th. But the retrograde fog kept the felt sense from converting into spoken language. This week, the conversion begins. The wanting gets words. What not to do in the final 8 days. This guidance is specific to the final third and differs from the guidance I gave for the first and second thirds because the energy is different. Do not rush the building process. The vocabulary is arriving on its own schedule, and forcing it produces the same miscommunication the first third of the retrograde produced. The words that arrive naturally during the building phase are more precise than words forced through the scrambled channel. If a sentence is not ready, let it develop another day. It will be ready soon. I have seen people lose the precision the retrograde was building by rushing to speak before the vocabulary was complete. They settle for approximate language because the approximate version is available now and the precise version is available Tuesday. Wait until Tuesday. The precision matters more than the speed. Do not mistake the thinning fog for clear sky. The retrograde is not over. The fog is thinning, but it has not cleared. Communication during the final third is significantly better than the first third, but it is not yet at direct station quality. Use the improving channel for important communications, but recognize that the channel is operating at maybe 70% capacity, not 100. Reserve the most critical communications for after March 20th, when the channel is fully restored. The last week of a retrograde often creates a false sense of completion. The improvement feels so dramatic compared to the peak fog that people assume the retrograde is functionally over. It is not. The final days still carry retrograde charge. The miscommunication risk is lower, but it is not zero. Do not announce what you have not yet fully integrated. The eclipse reading is still developing. Stage 3 resolution is underway, but the complete picture arrives around the time Mercury stations direct. Announcing preliminary results before the complete picture is available risks premature commitment to an incomplete understanding. I have watched this happen during previous retrogrades. Someone receives a clear insight during the building phase, assumes it is the final version, announces it publicly or makes a commitment based on it, and then the final development between day 15 and day 23 reveals a nuance that changes the commitment. Hold the insight. Let it complete. The announcement can wait 8 days. What to do in the final 8 days? Write. The building process accelerates when you write. journal entries, voice memos, letters you do not send yet, drafts of the message you are preparing. The physical act of converting internal knowing into external language trains the new vocabulary into functional shape. Every sentence you write during the building phase is practice, and the practice compounds. By March 20th, the practiced vocabulary will be available in real time, in conversation, in the moments when precision matters. Think of it as rehearsal. The performance is March 20th. The final 8 days are the dress rehearsal. Every time you practice saying what needs to be said, the words become more natural, more precise, more available under pressure. Test the new language in low-stakes conversations, not the critical relationship talk, not the career-defining meeting, the daily exchanges, coffee conversations, casual check-ins. Notice where the new vocabulary holds and where it still wobbles. The wobble points tell you where the building is not yet complete. Those are the areas that need a few more days of development. The testing is diagnostic. It shows you exactly what is ready and what needs more time. Prepare the communication you have been holding. You know the one, the message that has been composing itself in your head since the eclipse, the conversation that the cazimi made briefly possible, but the retrograde interrupted. The expression of what you want that Venus in Aries has been fueling. That communication is approaching readiness. It may not be ready today, but it is closer than it has been at any point in the retrograde. Begin shaping it consciously. Write it out. Revise it. Let the building process work on it daily, so that when March 20th arrives and the channel fully opens, the communication is not being created from scratch. It has been through 17 days of retrograde refinement, and it arrives polished by the process that seemed like it was only disrupting, but was actually forging the most precise version of what you need to say. The retrograde's gift, and every retrograde has one, even when it does not feel that way during the process, is the vocabulary it builds. Before this retrograde, you had a set of communication tools that were adequate for pre-conjunction understanding. But the conjunction changed what you know. The eclipse changed what you see. Venus changed what you want. And the old vocabulary was not built to carry any of that. The retrograde demolished the inadequate tools and spent 3 weeks building new ones. The new tools are not finished yet, but they will be. And when they are, when Mercury stations direct on March 20th and the channel fully reopens, you will be able to say things you could not say before. Not because the things are new, because the language is finally precise enough to carry them. March 20th opens the channel. The equinox on March 21st turns the season from winter to spring, and everything this transit sequence has built, from conjunction through retrograde, through eclipse, through Jupiter direct, through this final act of construction, becomes available for use. The timing is not accidental. The season turns at the exact moment the communication channel reopens. What has been internal goes external. What has been private becomes expressible. What has been developing in darkness pushes into light. 8 more days. The vocabulary is almost ready. The sentence you have been building for 3 weeks is nearly complete, and what it carries, when it finally arrives, will have been worth every day of the fog that forged it. The final act is the one that matters most, and it is happening now.